But the Misfits gave us an entire genre, a whole look. They gave us a hairstyle. They gave us probably one of the top 5 punk or rock and roll logos of all time. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast. It's the spooky season, man. It's October 24th. Right now, we got about a week till Halloween. Top 5 horror punk bands. I picked out the top 5 bands. This is my list. Rob will comment on it a little bit. He didn't have as much time to prepare as I did, seeing that he was out of town the weekend. I was out of town last week, so I had a little time over the weekend to listen to some music and stuff, and it was honestly a pretty easy list for me to make. If it was 10, it might have been harder, but top 5 was pretty easy. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then after that, I'll probably just do like another re-intro, and we'll talk about the Las Vegas trip, because we were both there together. If you hadn't seen the video already, I already posted one video of the both of us hanging out, and one of the Punk Rock Museum tour videos. So without further ado, this is the top 5 horror punk bands list. I got 3 things I want to touch on very quickly before we get on to the actual list. The first thing being, I did not put the Misfits on this list. The reason for that is that they basically started this genre, and I did want to I know we talked about them a couple weeks ago, but the Misfits started a genre of music that, while isn't my favorite necessarily, there are people that live by horror punk or horrorcore, whatever you want to call it, and that's all they listen to. So this is an important genre for a lot of people. So I would go as far as to say that I'm like kind of a novice even in this field. So if you have something to tell me about, let me know, man. Let me know what are your favorite Misfits things. What should I cover? Is there a particular topic you'd like me to talk about with the Misfits? Album review, whatever it is you want to do. If you want to hear from the Misfits or from me about the Misfits, or you have a topic, please let me know. Rob, how do you feel about the Misfits creating this genre?
Well, we talked about it last week. They really were the godfathers, and I think they are the definers in a very literal sense, and that's what makes a list like this kind of difficult. It's really hard to define horror punk, I think, very specifically, because a lot of punk in general borrowed from the Misfits, and like we talked about, just a lot of culture in general borrowed from the Misfits. So like whatever horror punk is basically whatever the Misfits did. So I think that's like that's like a good reason then to not put them on your list, because it just they kind of define the entirety of the genre. So it would make no sense to put them on the list. Every other band I think in the genre gets not voted on like, do they stack up to the Misfits, but necessarily their relationship or their take on what the Misfits initially did.
It's like almost like a top 5 Misfits not cover band, but tribute band almost.
Like descendants of the Misfits, so to speak. Like,
I will say, my list is going to upset some people. I didn't do that on purpose. I just put down my top 5 bands that fit into this criteria to me, and I would love to hear from some people about like what their opinions are on my list. But the Misfits gave us an entire genre, a whole look. They gave us a hairstyle. They gave us probably one of the top 5 punk or rock and roll logos of all time. And I just like to talk about them a little bit whenever I get the opportunity to, because it's a band that, as the older I get, the more I like their music. And I find it interesting because I really like their older stuff now far more than I used to. And I do find that very interesting. But yeah, they're basically the guys that brought this to us. And I think that, excuse me, I don't think Psychobilly would really exist as like it does without the Misfits. I don't think we'd have, I don't know, there's a lot of bands. So let's go ahead and wrap that part up. 2 things I want to talk about. It's weird. I've had 2 record labels in my lifetime, and they both started out with horror artists. It's interesting, man. It's interesting. 20 years ago, I was looking for it earlier, and I'm really, really sad that I don't have it. My copy's at my store. Of course it is. I was listening to it. I thought I had a couple other copies. I don't see them around here. That's really bumming me out. But 20 years ago, I had a label called Ground and Pound Records. Clearly, I've been in MMA my whole life. I put out an EP for a band called Grave Robbers. It's called Hell to Pay. It was like the sickest amalgamation of punk, hardcore, and metal I've ever heard. And they were so horror, that I wouldn't even know about Lucio Fulci the way I do now if it wasn't for that band, because they had a song called Fulci Lives, which is my personal favorite song that they've ever made. Oh, you know what? It's okay. They did another album, and I had that on vinyl in here somewhere. It's okay, whatever. But I just want to take a time to recognize the Grave Robbers from Houston, Texas, because, man, I'm telling you, dude, this band is, if they had stayed a band, man, I don't know, they still might be in my top 5. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put them in my top 5. So I'll talk about that in a minute. In my number 5, I'll make my number 6, and it's going to just, oh, man, people are going to be so stupid about it, but it is what it is. Go listen to these guys, and you'll understand why. You'll understand why they are so important, especially down here in Houston. They were like the band that did this. They would like, and they did it so well. Their EP was amazing. I did 1,000 copies. We had it in Hot Topics. It was awesome. And then they did their full length. I mean, I still talk to the guitar player, not all the time, but enough to where I'm going to send him this, because he'll understand why it's so important to me. Every song that I've ever heard by them has been good. They cover horror movie classic stuff. They talk about Italian giallo films. They talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, they are basically a direct line goes from the Misfits to them. I mean, it is direct, because if it wasn't for the dude, it's wild, man, because we used to have Halloween shows, and then we would dump pig's blood on people and stuff. It was like real gnarly. And I don't expect anybody else out there. My channel's not super big, so I would be a little surprised if somebody knew who Grave Robbers were. If you do know who they are, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know how you know about them. Where did you see them live, if that's what it was? Did you ever pick up a copy of Hell to Pay? If you did, please let me know. That would make my day. It was pretty awesome. People that I'm still in contact with right now and that I still hang out with right now were associated with that band. And so, I don't know. They have a little more metal in their music than punk, but dude, this band was amazing. So I'll stop jibber jabbering about that. Last thing before we get onto the actual list of my top 5 or whatever is the second artist I worked with, TJTRAINWRECK. Like, what in the world, dude? Like, how do I have the weird luck to have had 2 releases by artists like this? Because I would say he's the best rapper in horror punk. I've listened to this dude's music for, it's actually about almost exactly 1 year. I met him through one of his songs called Spooky Bitches. I wouldn't even have my label if it wasn't for him. So I owe that guy a lot. I just wanted to shout out to TJTRAINWRECK. Man, that guy is amazing. And he comes from the hardcore and punk scene. So if you like a little bit of hip hop stuff and you're interested in checking him out, please go do so. This isn't about me. You don't have to buy a tape from me. Buy stuff from him. Go check out his Spotify, his YouTube channel. But dude, he's got really clever stuff, and he's super DIY. He does all his own music, all his own beats, all his own recording and mixing and mastering, his own artwork, his own videos. This dude is about as punk rock as it gets for somebody that's not actually in a punk band. So if you're interested in some super catchy, spooky shit, man, go check out TJTRAINWRECK. I'm going to have him on the podcast tomorrow. I'll probably drop that on Friday. Just kind of catching up with him, man. It's been a while since I've had him on. So yeah, let's get to my top 5. Sorry for being so long-winded. Those are things that are important to me, and I wanted people to, I don't know, I would like it for people to hear this stuff and check it out.
Acknowledge it, yeah.
It's all stuff that's very close to me, man. So yeah. Okay, so I have in my number 5 spot that I've changed to number 6. Oh god, I don't want to hear it from people, but I'm gonna. So I guess number 6 at this point is the Cramps. I like the Cramps. Almost every song that the Cramps play that I've heard, I really enjoyed. I don't think I own a shirt. I do have an LP. But it's one of those things where, like, I couldn't omit them from the list because of who they are, because I like every song I've ever heard by them, but I don't know a bunch of their songs.
Mm-hmm.
I know a handful, but the Cramps are one of those bands that they're almost as much of like a gothic rock band as they are a horror punk band. Go ahead.
That's what makes horror punk, as I said earlier, very difficult to pin down.
Yeah,
because
we're going to get to that in a second.
What actually makes it horror punk, and to the extent that these things make it horror punk, we tend to ascribe it to genres outside of punk.
Yeah.
So like whether it's like a gothic thing, which is a completely different. Like that's why Davey Havoc back then, they used to hate when they would get called gothic punk, because he was like Davey Havoc was kind of actually into gothic punk, and it was just a totally different, more of a new wave inspired thing than what they were doing. And it feels like and then metal just it seems like people can associate that more because they're sort of doing, as we've talked about before, not really with horror punk, but when like punk bands dip into horror, it is more campy, it is more Hollywood movie than maybe like the sort of Dungeons and Dragons aspect of metal, and where that brings the horror aspect into it. And so it's horror punk really has to fight for its own like very unique lane.
Yes, I do think that. Yeah, I mean, horror punk I think is the same as punk. It means a few different things. That's why somebody like TJTRAINWRECK can be put in this video and it's not out of place. Go listen to his lyrics, watch his videos. If you don't think that dude's a horror punk artist, you're not paying attention. So,
well, and that's why I would ask you, do you think like that is the defining character? It's the one punk genre where the lyrics actually really matter for it to be considered that subgenre?
Well, sort of, but we're going to get into my list here in a minute. And I would think that it doesn't, it's more or less, you got to have 2 out of 3 things. You have to have either the look, the lyrics, or the sound. And you need to have 2 out of those 3. You can't have just one. Excuse me. You can't have a devil lock and that's it. And then you're a horror punk band. It just isn't going to work. You can't have, lyrically be, have a song about a horror movie and then you don't look like it at all and you really don't sound like it at all. No, that's just, you just had a song about a horror movie at that point. And that's just like bands that are punk bands that have a ska song. They're not ska bands, they just have a ska song. At least in my opinion, you have to have 2 out of the 3 kind of running throughout your entire.
Yeah, and I think that makes it in a way is almost like the most aesthetic brand of punk in that way, that it has to have all these other like in some ways there's almost more rules for it because it's so ill-defined that you have, like you said, you have to have the, and like you wouldn't say something is or isn't something necessarily based on lyrical content, although there might be some lines like you wouldn't quite hit, but like with horror punk it's actually very specific. It's kind of implied with it, or at least the vibe has to be there. Like you're saying with the sound and the look, the vibe has to be great. Like there is a little bit more definition in that way.
Because I'm gonna go ahead and just keep the Cramps in number 5, I guess, and Grave Robbers and Cramps can just flip flop back and forth because the Cramps are a little more influential and the Grave Robbers are a little more straightforward horror punk, and they have more importance to me personally. I don't really know where to put those two, but I feel like if I didn't mention the Grave Robbers, not only would I be selling myself short, I'd be not giving the listeners of this channel something that they absolutely need to go check out. Like, it's not like I'm just saying this, dude. I'm going to put links to it. I assure you that. Also, I have a couple of bands here that I'm fixing to talk about that don't really have horror lyrics, that's what I was like, oh man, because when I was coming up with my criteria, man, I'm sorry. I had 3 things and literally I was like, okay, they have to meet 2 out of the 3. They can't have just one. And if it's got all 3, cool, whatever. My number 4 has all 3. Number 4 for me is going to be Blitzkid. Basically Misfits Jr. They're probably the actual best horror punk band out there after the Misfits. They're just not my personal favorite. Some of their songs, on the other hand, are like in my favorites. And I don't know anything about them personally, really. So I don't know if they have any kind of stupid crap going on like Michael Graves did, but I don't know them like that. I just know that they've got like 3 or 4 albums and I really enjoyed most of what I heard. They have one album though that's got this snare on it. It's like, it sounds like the St. Anger snare. And I can't hardly listen to it. It's just, dude, ping, ping, ping. But it's like everything else is beautiful. And I'm like, dude, what did y'all do this for? But the Blitzkids are a great band. I would say that Pretty in a Casket's probably my favorite song by them. It is so good. Are you familiar with Blitzkid?
Yeah. So to me, Blitzkid is exactly what you're saying. So on the list we're gonna do next week on pop punk, there's a band that I have in this category, just like you had when you put Less Than Jake as the greatest ska punk band. And like at first you said that, and then when your reasoning, I don't know if I agree with it, but your reasoning makes sense. I think Blitzkid is that band for this list in that they are if we're not going to necessarily put the Misfits on there, then what is the result of the Misfits? It is Blitzkid. Like what would if you and I started a horror punk band that kind of wanted to be the Misfits, what would it come out like? Ideally, Blitzkid. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Dude, and like our top. We're doing top 5 pop punk bands next week. I think this is gonna be one of those videos next week where we get a lot of people's input that are gonna be irritated that we didn't put a band on a list because we're older, and so there's gonna be a ton of bands from like 2006 on that I don't even talk about. So I will say this in advance to that video: if you are going to do that, please just understand that I'm 41 and I don't know these bands, so they're not going to be on my list. Feel free to let me know which bands are the best out there that you really like. I'll listen to them. I just don't know they exist. It's nothing personal. But Blitzkid is one of those bands that when I first heard it, I was like, oh, here's the replacement to the Misfits not existing anymore. And so I really enjoyed them a lot. I know they're like a 2-piece though, which is kind of strange. And I believe that one of those dudes plays in Calabrese now, I think. Anyways, Calabrese is a band that I'm not going to do what?
Yeah, this is part of that whole same network.
Well, Calabrese is a band that I'm going to go ahead and just say it. It's not on my list, but I do want to talk about them for a second because I just discovered them. I didn't know them until about 2-3 weeks ago. I had heard them once or twice before. One of my friends was talking about them, like, hey, you need to check these guys out. I like that band, dude. I just don't know them enough yet to put them on a list like this. They're different, though. I consider that like a goth band.
Yeah. They
it still fits the mold, but
they're in town this month actually, and
nice.
I was kind of doing some research on them, and it's like it's almost more, it's more of like what we were saying, like what Davey Havoc was talking about. It's more in that sort of vein. Like I think it could still, like you can make a list like this and it would still qualify, but not necessarily with limited familiarity. I was very similar very recently because the reason why I checked them out is I thought. Because I saw it, I thought that maybe they were like a Hellcat band or something. Because I just saw the poster when I was downtown,
right?
And the coaster, it's like it's this girl with the holding the thing, and it just looked like a the big bass, but it's
visually
looked like
they do
like
look
it could have been a Necromantics cover for all we know,
right?
You know what I mean? So that's why I kind of wanted to check them out. Again. Not that I wouldn't be into it, but I kind of would put them where you're putting them.
They're like a Lost Boys tribute band almost, and I like it though. I genuinely do like them. I've even reached out to the singer. I was like, hey man, I really like that music a lot. I could put it on a horror punk list, and then at the same exact time, I could not argue if somebody said they're not horror punk. Like, okay, like I think this is the one genre in like our stuff that has the most flexibility, and more people can be right and simultaneously wrong at the exact same time. And none of it's actually wrong. Like it's just super subjective. This is the most subjective subgenre of punk, in my opinion. That takes us to number 3. Number 3 is a band that has released some stuff on Hellcat Records. Who do you think it is?
A band that has released some stuff on Hellcat Records.
I think they released on Hellcat. I think so.
I already said Necromantics.
I'm gonna feel real stupid if they didn't. Dude, crap! Now I'm second guessing myself. Did Tiger Army not put stuff out on Hellcat?
Yeah, they were on my list last week. They were
okay. Good. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I thought.
Top 5 Hellcat bands. Okay,
bro. Okay,
I thought it was too obvious. I was thinking I was trying to go deeper.
I was trying to trick you into saying Necromantics, but it was Tiger Army
because I said Necromantics.
So Necromantics was the original one on that spot. It was Necromantics because they have an album that I think is pretty great, right? Like that's like almost perfect, but they don't have multiple. And Tiger Army does. And so I literally just was like, I was like listening to it. And in my head, I was like, man, Tiger Army's just not going to make the cut. So I started listening to both bands and I was like, oh, crap, it is Tiger Army. Tiger Army is the one. So in that little subgenre of horror punk and psychobilly, Tiger Army is it, dude. They are the band.
So if they counted, they'd be at least my number 2 if we're taking the Misfits out, like for sure. They're amazing. We talked about them a lot last week, so I don't want to repeat a ton of it, but holy shit, I forgot how much I liked them until 2 weeks ago when we went to check that out, and how frequently I used to listen to them too, like all the time. They were always on. Part of it because they could that music really can engender like a good vibe too. Like when you're listening to it, it's pretty along with it. The lyric, that's exactly what it is. And not a lot of our stuff is quite like that. A lot of our stuff has a little bit different kind of edge to it that we're trying to get out of it. Where this is the Tiger Army is amazing. I mean, again, those 3 albums we talked about, the EP of the early stuff, that green one, check it all out. The visuals. Like you said, it's psychobilly, but I think there's a difference between like the psychobilly that's more rockabilly, that's almost this more of like this 50s kind of thing, than the full on psychobilly with the horror, the fully horror infused stuff, which is more obviously.
In my opinion, anything that's psychobilly is also horror punk. all of it, because it all
Mhm.
sounds the same to me. It's just horror punk with a stand-up bass instead of a Matt Freeman bass. It's
Mhm.
just, I mean, there's Madsen, there's Necromantics, there's tons of that stuff, dude. The Meteors, this all
Mhm.
psychobilly stuff, man. It's all horror music, and the super high pompadours. I used to have a pompadour and wear like leather jackets, and all I listened to for a long time was like rockabilly stuff, and then like random hardcore bands. It was weird.
That
But
singer for the Necromantics, man. I don't know how he walks around with that thing.
what was hair?
Yeah.
It's awesome, dude. I love it so much. I love it so much, bro. It's so good. It looks just as cool as a mohawk to me.
Mhm.
But Tiger Army, I think Tiger Army 2 is my favorite album by them.
Yeah.
3 is really good. 1's a classic, but not quite. I feel like with 2, they really hit their stride. Man, they've had some really great songs. I can't recall them off the top of my head because I'm not that kind of. I don't remember song titles very often. But dude, that band is so good. I really enjoyed listening to them again in the last 2 weeks, just kind of diving back into their discography.
Incorporeal is that one. That's the one that I always say at the top of my lungs there.
Oh man, hold on, let me look real quick because they have a
Incorporeal.
That's a good, yeah. That song gets stuck in your head, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
Dude,
that's what
you mess around and find out with that band.
Very chanty too. That's the other thing too. Is that those?
Oh
those
yeah,
things are very
dude.
chanty.
Tiger Army never dies. Like they had that. They have the most in their music. Like you hear, dude, that's all you hear in their music, and it's kind of amazing. Let's see. Oh, dude, yeah. Oh man, In the Orchard's probably one of my favorite songs by them. That is such a beautiful song. Oh my goodness. Outlaw Heart from the first record's really good. Dude, their top songs on their Spotify is freaking ridiculous, man. Oh, dude. Shout out to this dude named Peter Pan that's always in my comments talking shit. This kid was Spotify just in my head for something I gotta mention real quick. He was talking about Voodoo Glow Skulls, and I said, "Man, they're the." Oh no, I put in a comment one of the most underrated bands in the genre, and he was trying to tell me that they weren't, and I was like, "How are they not? They're never brought up. I never hear anybody talk about them. They're never on lists. I never see shirts or anything with them, like with them represented on
I
it."
forgot to mention them on our list.
You know what I'm saying? And like he was like, "Yeah, but I like them a lot." And I was trying to tell him like, "Dude, just because you like them a lot, that doesn't mean that they're not underrated. Like that." At all. Like that's not how that works. And then he wanted to tell me that they have 88,000 Spotify listeners. And I was like, dude, all that tells me is that 88,000 people hit follow on their, page. I follow them. I never listened to them. Like I literally went back and was like, all right, I picked out like 10 of the best ska punk bands I could think of. And all of them except one has, dude, 25,000 or more followers than them. Most of them have hundreds of thousands more. And I was like, bro, so Mr. Peter Pan, stop. I want to like you, man. I'm trying to be cool, dude. You're driving me nuts. I feel like I'm talking to a 13-year-old that has like a 40-year-old dude's photograph on there or something. I feel like maybe this is just he's just trolling me the whole time. And I'm like, damn kids. But and then he said I called him stupid. I'm like, where did I call you stupid? Like, oh, this dude, there's a language barrier. He's not from here. I think he's in like maybe over in the UK somewhere. And I think that because I can tell by the way he's talking. So like, shout out to Peter Pan. Weird name, buddy. But yeah, man. If you want to continue to be able to talk in my comments, please chill. Please, I'm being nice, man. Please, dude. Please. All right, intermission over with. Let's go back to
what a tangent.
Bro, dude, it was driving me absolutely nuts earlier today because everything he's saying was making me irritated because I'd be like, I'm not really feeling good today. I woke up, I just woke up. I had a thing last night that happened and I haven't been feeling good today. So everything he's saying, I'm like, nah, bro, chill. Anyways, okay, so my top 2 horror punk bands. Number 2. This is hard because I wanted to put them in number 1. I just couldn't because of my number 1. I'm going to look this up real quick because I want to read some stuff off of here from their Wikipedia page. I think that's what it's called. Number 2 is the Murder City Devils. They're the only band that sound the way they do that I've ever heard. And at first I thought they don't really qualify as horror punk. But then I went back to like the 2 out of 3 thing. They definitely look it, and they
Mhm.
definitely have that aura in their music. They have the organ keyboards. And then I heard a song, like I was listening to some of their music, and they have a song where it starts off talking about dudes hanging from the gallows, dripping something on the streets because he's been disemboweled and hanging. I'm like, how does that not qualify? So they absolutely qualify. Boom Swagger Swagger, Rum to Whiskey, dude. The freaking Murder City Devils are amazing, but they do have a lot of garage rock in their stuff. They're from Seattle. They started '96. They recently got back together. I say recently, it's been forever now. It's 2006, but for a while they were just kind of up in the air. I got to see them in Austin one time, and I bought a bunch of shirts, and then I lost them all in that stupid flood. But the Murder City Devils are a band that's another band that's very, very underrated. I never get them. I never hear them talked about. But when they do come up in conversation, they're highly celebrated. They're very, very, very good. Very good band.
Yeah, they just don't seem to fit well. I think it's like what you were saying about finding them in the genres too. You don't really think of like who else like you would put like with them in like and maybe where they're from too. I think Seattle's like a difficult place for punk to come out of.
When I
So much
first,
that gets filtered to as like alternative and stuff, and even then,
yes.
except they even have that garage kind of more vibe to them too. You know.
Well, when they have the keyboard thing, it's just they have switchblades keyboards. They're like an amalgamation of like misfits, 50s rock, greaser. Like it's
Mhm.
not just. But when I first heard of them, I always paired them up with bands like Against Me and American Steel because when I first heard of them, that's who I heard of them with. And
Mhm.
all three of those bands have a sound that's kind of hard to like pigeonhole.
Define, yeah.
Yeah. So like I just thought like, oh, these three bands go together. But in later years, they've kind of separated themselves and they all sound a little different now. But when I first heard them, they all sounded very similar to me, which I find very interesting because they're not similar at all, really.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's
but
how
when
genres, honestly, it's because who they're playing next to, honestly, is how we often categorize these guys more so than their sound.
have you ever heard much of their music?
A little bit here and there. It's a lot with what you're saying. Like people tend to, I wouldn't say, yeah, they're definitely underrated, but people bring them up a lot as sort of just like, hey,
Oh,
did
do
you
they
hear them? Did
really?
you? Yeah, but
I
no one goes
never
deep.
hear their
Like
name.
there's no podcast on the Murder City Devils. You know what I mean? Like they're not they're just not. I think
Well,
maybe celebrated is the wrong thing to say, but like, yeah, because it's not. I wouldn't say they're fully obscure. That's what I'm
no, they're
trying
not
to say there.
obscure necessarily, but they're underappreciated for sure.
Yeah,
Under
undercover
talked
maybe
about.
you would say,
Yeah.
yeah, but people like who do like what you and I do for sure.
But my favorite horror punk, oh man, I just don't want to hear it from people, but I'm Alkaline Trio is the best horror punk band. They just are. Like, sorry. Like Misfits, of course, is the kings. But it's like UFC, man. You got a champion, you got your first, what do they call it?
Number one contender.
Number one contender would be Alkaline Trio. And if you don't think that Alkaline Trio is a horror punk band, just go watch their latest music video. Like, please go listen to some of their lyrics. I don't know very many bands talk about dog shit and razor blades.
It's the most common theme in their music throughout their entire catalog. Actually, is the horror element. Like there's horror stuff on. Literally, is this thing cursed? Is the name of their last album, and their first album is so horror that you won't even say it on here. So I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about their horror bona fides. I really wouldn't have put them on this list though if I had done the full on list, and that was why I was having a little bit of trouble with this. Because I was like, okay, well, yeah, the Misfits and Alkaline Trio are sort of like the automatics, but I was like, I was wondering, do they? I don't know how many people would consider them horror punk. They definitely fit into that, but I just don't know if they would necessarily be considered horror punk. Or are they like pop punk and emo with a horror like flavor to them?
That's the Misfits too.
Right. I mean, I don't disagree
I'm
with
just saying,
that.
like the Misfits are just pop songs with horror movie lyrics. So like,
Mhm.
they're no more horror punk than Alkaline Trio, in my opinion. They wear it a little more, and they've kind of like taken it and ran with it. But Alkaline Trio, do they have very, very dark, dude? Yes, bro. I've got that
right on my desk. Speaking of horror,
Yeah, Halloween at the Metro, bro.
the best live punk DVD I think ever. I'm gonna say that hot take without thinking too hard about it.
I got a couple that are pretty good, but that's up there, top 5 for me for sure. And I've got some really good ones. My One Man Army one's probably my favorite though. I'm super partial to that band though. It's
pin that for a future video. Let's talk about our favorite like punk DVDs. Let's
we can do that.
Put that. Yeah, let's put that in the near future.
Well, we're gonna include punk rock movies or just punk DVDs live shows and stuff.
Yeah, I think those could be 2 different categories.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
because I would like to do a punk movie one too. Because
I feel like you and I would be like go very deep on this topic.
Yes, I think so too. But Alkaline Trio is one of those bands that. So at first I wasn't gonna put them on here, man. I was trying to stick with bands like the Cramps and Necromantics, like these guys that are just horror to the core.
That was my point. It's hard. People don't interact with Alkaline Trio necessarily as horror punk. That's why it's hard to put them on there.
And they don't have to. They don't have to call Murder City Devils horror punk either, because this is my list. And so, like, this is one of those things where I think when I said it earlier, I think this is the most subjective subgenre of punk. I truly believe that. I think that a lot of people are going to be able to say, no, that's not horror punk, or yes, that is. And nobody's going to really be wrong. I think the horror punk subgenre just kind of defines itself. You define it by what your parameters are. What do you think is horror punk? Now, I wouldn't call Rancid a horror punk band, but there's a lot of bands out there that I think fit yes or no.
Well, like I think Rancid, though, to be fair to them, because Drink, we're talking Rancid here, very responsible for horror punk though in a lot of ways though too in the modern era, because like pretty much everything we're saying except for like Alkaline Trio and the Cramps are somewhat Hellcat adjacent, or at least in that sort of world. So
I will say
lot of that
Hellcat
is a result
of
it. Yeah,
it was a very dark. Everything about it was dark. The imagery was dark. The bands were dark. Hellcat as a name is like a black cat being scared. Like, dude, like, yeah, Hellcat very much, I think, lends at least nothing else. Like a horror punk needs to kind of tip the cap to Hellcat and be like, appreciate that, keeping us alive for a while. Because bands like Necromantics and Tiger Army, while Necromantics didn't have their album, I don't think originally put out on Hellcat, I don't think they would have been anywhere close to as big.
A Hellcat band, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
no, that's true, and it's going to. I was thinking about this when we talked about Hellcat Records, and it's like, so Hellcat is basically like Rancid without the Op ID side to it, and that's a lot of what the Hellcat stuff kind of is, because it's a little darker, it's a little grittier, but it doesn't really have a defined sound. And I think the horror aspect is one of the things that sort of defines Hellcat as its own unique thing, like, you know, away from old Epitaph stuff. I'm thinking about like a lot of the Alkaline Trio stuff too. Obviously, they do a lot of Misfits covers in general, so that they just fit well. But when you think of like even early on songs like "I Lied My Face Off," which just has this dark imagery, or "Cringe," but also like they have like the best Charlie Manson song I think that anyone ever wrote with Sadie, which is maybe not necessarily a punk song. It would be almost more of a kind of new wavy thing, which is Alkaline Trio, though. Another guy,
I don't consider that new wavy, but whatever.
Another band you would talk about from that though is Alkaline Trio really is the modern version of the Damned. And then I don't know where you would put them. The Damned then. I don't know if the Damned are horror punk, but they're definitely like the New York Dolls might not be punk, but like punk kind of wouldn't exist in the way it does without them. It's the same sort of thing. I think with the Cramps. I mean with the Damned, yeah.
So I almost brought up the Damned. I think the Cramps are a little more where I should be with that. I think that this is such a strange conversation. This is the weirdest video we've done because it's kind of gone like this. There's not as much structure to this conversation as there is most of our videos.
Not structured or horror punk. I mean, that's
kind of my point. And 2 bands I want to shout out real quick before we move on to our week in Vegas. I got to shout out to AFI, dude. You have got to shout out AFI when you're talking about horror punk. Because if nothing else, they've got like this 2-year span where they were like these horror punk guys, and that put them directly into like this new wavy stuff, this gothy stuff. That's because of where they were in the horror punk. That's a natural progression, dude. You got Miss Murder from the Halloween cover. You wouldn't get that without that. And so they have an album and a half that is so good that they have to be mentioned in this conversation, with only that much of their music being in that genre.
We're not going to give them 2.5.
No,
you're not counting Black Sails and Art of Drowning as
two great Black Sails.
No,
yeah,
you're not putting Art of Drowning on there, really?
To me,
that's like the best horror punk album of all time. If you're going to rank albums,
no, dude, that's not even on the top 10. Hold
Yeah,
on.
that would be like number 1 or number 2 for me if we're not putting
Really?
Misfits stuff in. Yeah,
Hold on. I'm thinking maybe I'm missing something here, but let me look real fast.
because to me it's Black Sails. The Halloween EP comes in, and the Art of Drowning and Halloween EP are basically the same album. It's just like it's just 4 more songs.
Give me 1 second. Wait, what now?
So I'm saying, like, for their horror punk, I always say Black Sails, Art of Drowning, and then the Halloween EP. I would always give it. I'd give it 2.5.
I would say 2 then. I wouldn't say 2.5. It would just be Art of Drowning because I'm an idiot and I was thinking the EP and not the full length, and Black Sails.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's why I
sorry.
think. Yeah, because
No,
the
no,
half I was like, well, it'd
in
be
my
2.5.
head I was thinking Art of Drowning, but in my head I was thinking All Hallows, like the cover of All Hallows was popping up.
Well,
But
to
it's
me,
not
they
really
are
the same thing. That's like
they are a continuation. Like, to me, it's like if you told me, and it's not. This is not the case, but if they just recorded them all in the same session, because to me those are Art of Drowning songs. They're just they picked 4 of them and put them in on the Halloween EP.
that's kind of how I feel about it too. So I guess yeah, 2.5 albums. I guess is probably the correct answer. I was so confused for a second. I was like, what is going on?
Well, that's what I was like. You don't like Art of Drowning? I was like, I was gonna undo the friendship. The whole thing was gonna fall apart, man. If you didn't
I
like
thought you
Art
were
of
talking
Drowning.
about shut your mouth and open your eye. No. The one with the little kid on the face.
Yeah. Oh,
Wait.
open wide.
Open your mouth.
Devil.
No, this
No, that's
shut your mouth, open your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, the 3rd album. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that one's not a horror punk album to me.
No,
that's just a
like
straight up hardcore.
a dark hardcore. Yeah, like with like that. I mean, that's where they started with that.
You see that's where they're going though, because that thing came from like I think a board game or something from like way back when, or some kind of I don't know tarot card thing or something.
And there's like funky lyrically. There's like funky songs on there that are a little. You could tell they were going there. And then what's funny, and I said this before, I think I said this with you, is like their progression to where Sing the Sorrow came out and they really hit it big is almost in. I always say it's flipped. It should have been the other. They should have come out with Art of Drowning is closer to their earlier stuff, and Black Sails is closer to what they became that made them really, really rich and famous. And it's funny how they kind of went. Like they went darker first and then got a little lighter. And then I think their famous stuff is kind of an amalgamation, as you were saying, of those 2 things. But then they really started bringing in the other, like the actual goth rock influences and that stuff that they brought in, which was the mainstream AFI. When at least with them, I always say with them, at least like they just weren't a punk band anymore, just straight up. Like it wasn't like they still were. People but they
tried to put when they weren't a punk band anymore, they tried to put like hardcore dancing and stuff in their videos still for a while, and it got real stupid, bro. Because with that album, they weren't a punk band anymore.
No, they weren't.
Even with that video, they weren't even listening to AFI when they were dancing. They were listening to Hatebreed at the video shoot. Like that's well documented.
Yeah, they very much just exited punk.
Weird, huh?
In that way. Yeah, but that's what I said. I don't really hold it against them because they actually did exit punk and they weren't trying to pretend to be something else. I don't ever hold that against them. I don't like the album, but I don't hold that against them at all.
Yeah, I don't hold it against them at all because my whole thing is do whatever you want to do. Okay, even if I don't like what you're doing, I would still rather you do what you want to do. Hey, try to center yourself in the frame.
No, I'm looking at the thing over there. Yeah, and
I try to stare at it's a pain.
And I have a pin there. And one last thing on it is that like with that stuff is I think you could say even on the stuff that like I really don't like a lot of their stuff after really from Sing the Sorrow on, it very much was true to themselves. I think it very much was true to themselves, and you could always get that with AFI on all of the records. I feel like as funny as it sounds, but like a 42-year-old Davey trying to do horror punk would have just been really bad. Versus maybe
we don't know because he changed into a soccer mom, but like, yeah. I mean, dude, that guy went straight to like a suburban soccer mom haircut.
He's got the haircut, yeah.
Yeah, do you, Davey, man? I don't care. He's an awesome dude, and he's one of my favorite vocalists of all time. So like, I'm not tripping. But when I first saw him with that like really long, flat iron, straight, sharp hair, I was like, why? And then I was like, who cares? Like,
have you seen him recently?
I really thought maybe he was gay or something, but I was like, maybe that's why he's going super into the fashion stuff because a lot of dudes from that culture lifestyle lean into the fashion stuff a lot. And so then I don't know or care though. It doesn't matter to me, dude. Davey Havok's awesome. Like
I've spent a lot of time researching that and got no answers because I've just been
really?
But yeah,
I didn't care enough to research it. I just thought maybe that's
like he's never been tied to like a partner, and I've just always kind of assumed that just because of his, as you're saying, because of his interest. But like, talk about a dude who seems to be super private. Like I think like a lot of people just don't know a lot about him.
On the topic of Davey Havok, right before we go into this other subject, I gotta say, man, one of the coolest things I've ever seen live in my entire life. And I always heard about it, and I saw it once. I've only seen them play live twice, excuse me. But the one time I saw them and like knew who they were, knew what I was listening to, went to go see them, this happened. I kept hearing, dude, people love AFI so much that it gets so crowded in there that they'll put their hands up and that fool will walk out onto the crowd and the crowd will just hold him up and he'll still be singing. And I was like, oh, nonsense, bro. And then it happened, dude. And I was like, what is going on right now? People were literally holding him. I mean, didn't last long, but he was out there singing a few bars out there on the mic with crowd holding him up by his feet. One of the most insane frontmen I've ever seen, dude. He's
definitely my favorite band that I don't like anymore, if that makes any sense.
Oh, like their new music?
Like, yeah, and I haven't liked anything they've released for like 20 years, basically.
Yeah.
And they're still one of my favorite bands. Like, they're the only band that really holds that status.
They'd probably be my number one in that, if that's the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, like, I can't think of another band that I still listen to that I don't like any of their new stuff at all, except AFI.
Like, I'll always listen to the new album just when it comes out, almost like out of respect, just to like, let me see what they're doing. And I know I'm not gonna like it. I listen to it, and I'm just really bored with it. But it's like, it's all right. And
I don't even want to hear it, dude. Like,
they've never stopped incorporating songs from this era into their live set, also. So that's
cool.
They're not ashamed of, like,
yeah,
you know, even though they admit, like, yeah, we're a little bit different now, but they're cool. I really have tons of. I go on about AFI all day long.
Last band I have got to shout out before we go off of horror punk, dude. The Nerve Agents, dude. If you like AFI stuff and you like what else would fit into that? It's really old AFI. Go listen to Nerve Agents. I think they only have like 1 or 2 records, man. That band was awesome, dude. And they were definitely like a gothic hardcore band.
Another Hellcat band, right?
Oh, were they really?
I think so.
Dude, what?
I
didn't even know that.
I thought they were. I mean, they might not be, but
wouldn't even surprise me. But let's move on, man. All right.